this is to show that it was really about my weapon. They said stuff about the mask, but watch.
I want to tell you, I've told him the mask policy, and then Robert.
I understand this is a no weapons facility, right?
Ms. Mueller, you may inquire.
Please state your name and spell your last for the record.
Randall McLeland, MC, capital L-E-L-A-N-D.
And how are you employed?
I'm a planner with Central District Health
And where is that located?
here in Boise, over on Armstrong Place.
And that's in Ada County, state of Idaho?
Yes, ma'am.
And how long have you been employed there?
At this point, I'm at just shy of 14 years.
And what position do you hold there?
I'm a planner with the Public Health Preparedness Program.
And what are your job duties and responsibilities there?
Normal day-to-day is working through the interface of the business of emergency management and how it relates to public health, and then establishing plans, policies, and procedures for how the health district would respond to a public health emergency within the community.
And then Robert.
I understand this is a no weapons facility, right?
Did you have any previous interactions with any of the individuals?
Quite possibly.
Under what law?
That's the policy for the building.
Okay, so that doesn't trump state law, so.
No, this is a no weapons facility.
Okay, under what authority?
Under the authority of us as a public servant.
All right, you don't have that authority. It's clear in state law. No, you don't. So where's the meeting at?
And what was your role that day?
I was to help monitor the entry of the observers that were going to come into the room, to help ensure compliance with the directive that all persons that coming into the building or that were in the building for any other business were wearing their masks.
Everybody in the room is being trespassed out of the facility for not wearing face covering? That's correct. You need to leave.
Under what authority?
The Board of Health has set a policy at the board meeting last Friday that all observers to this meeting, anybody who comes into the facility, doesn't have to be at this meeting. Anyone that comes into any of our 3 facilities must wear an appropriate face covering unless you're age 2 or younger. So that's no exception.
What about this?
They don't have the authority to do that.
Can you identify any provisions within the policy language specifically that Mr. Jones?
Objection. I'm not sure what the policy has to do with the charge at hand.
Ms. Boyles?
Well, Your Honor, the trespass requires the defendant to remain in a government building without permission, and the entire trespass charge is predicated upon noncompliance with the policy. So it's absolutely relevant to the case at hand.
All right. I'll overrule the objection. You may continue.
I don't understand about this.
The director is trespassing the facility, okay? We show up, I'm not sure how many were here last week, possibly, I mean, I spoke with
I was here on Tuesday, and I came without a mask.
Right, you did. So what they've done now is they made the decision that if you are not going to wear a mask in the facility,
So it's mandatory.
no, it's not mandatory. They'd like you to wear a mask in here. If not, you can attend the meeting by wearing a mask, or they're going to trespass you from the facility. So.
The director and the Board of Health, after consultation with legal counsel, had established policy for staff and visitors in the building to wear protective masks. There were 7 people in the room that, at the time when everybody was asked to please make sure that they were wearing masks and that it was appropriately covering their nose and mouths. There were 5 people who did comply with that request, and 2 who did not.
I came in here they have to accommodate.
And the law says in person.
That's an issue you can address with the district health.
In order to be trespassed.
In order to be trespassed, the director of the facility can choose who is going to attend the meetings in this facility and who is not going to attend the meetings in this facility, which is what he's done.
It's
So
a
due to the
public
fact,
meeting law.
ma'am, just due to the fact you have not adhered to the guidelines of the CDH before, he is trespassing you guys from the meeting.
No, but he doesn't have the authority to trespass, and you have the discretion, you don't have to
And I am
trespass.
using discretion, so this is what our discretion is today. We'd be more than happy to walk out front with you guys, you can continue the several people up front, and you can continue your protest outside. Okay, we can issue a citation.
Well, I'm not protesting, I'm
we're here
I'm
for the meeting,
I'm
and you're
participating in government.
You can access our guest wireless and you can watch the live stream outside, so you're still watching the public meeting.
Can I ask you guys a question? I can count
So I
3
haven't gone through
meetings
the-
off
I
the
haven't
top of
gone-
my head where people's public comments and participation was curtailed because systems weren't working, Wi-Fi was interrupted, that kind of thing. So it's not really a fail-safe process.
Only when it comes down to it, I don't believe they have the authority to stop me from coming to a meeting that is open to the public. But, and if you pay attention to the meeting, specifically to keep my point of view out of this meeting, because I cannot wear a mask. So they were politically directing that directly at people like me. So I don't believe they have that authority, and you guys are interrupting the meeting. I would like to get back to the meeting if you would.
Well, we're not gonna get back to the meeting until we can deal with the director, his wishes and trespass.
Trespass amount of sense.
Okay, so, these are our options again, please don't interrupt me until we get through. You can walk out right now, you can see citation court dates, or you can stay in the building and be arrested for trespassing.
Mr. McLeland has stated that they must wear protective masks or face coverings or appropriate coverings, just trying to establish what policy Mr. Jones did not comply with.
Ms. Mueller?
Judge, the charge here today is for trespass, and it was part of the policy that they were, yes, removed because of that. However, they were also asked to leave, as Mr. McLeland has testified here that they were asked to leave, and they did not leave, at which point they were trespassed. The policy is separate.
The court date was the second.
You can't arrest people for trespassing.
Does anybody wanna walk out right now?
No, if you wanna go, you're totally.
Does anybody wanna walk out right now?
I don't think it's right, but.
Okay, so if you wanna walk out, great, does anybody else wanna walk out right now?
I do, but I want to make sure that what's going on in
I'm
here.
recording as well.
That's all.
Okay, I'm gonna walk out, but I just wanna say, you guys don't have to do this. You don't need to work for them.
Does anybody want a citation today?
You should be working for us.
I want a citation rather than be, because I'd like to watch the meeting. I've been here for
You don't have
meetings.
to.
Well, regardless if you received a citation or not, that's not a ticket to stay, because you're still gonna be trespassed for the park. I'd be more than happy.
That's all.
you want.
Well, sometimes it's a different choice, so you're welcome to stay, and then I just have to know when I go bail them out.
I claim my right to be in this meeting because it is afforded to me by the codes and things. And so I'm using that right. I'm sitting here, I'm trying to participate in the meeting. That speaker's pretty low. I'm still talking. And I'm defending them, but I want to continue with this meeting. I wish you guys would stop interrupting the public meeting.
So are you refusing to leave Boise Police?
No, I am refusing to give up my right. I'm defending my right to be
Are
here.
you refusing to leave the building?
I'm defending my right to talk.
Ma'am, are you gonna leave the building today, or a citation, or leave the building? What would you like
I
to do?
will leave the building when the meeting's over.
Okay,
I always
the
do.
meeting's over for you right now, because you've been trespassing the building.
No.
No, you haven't given me any.
You're interrupting.
Okay, so now we're at the points of citation, so
So you're.
we're past the opportunity to leave, okay? Because we weren't gonna do this today, we weren't gonna play the game of, okay, oh, now.
Yeah, so stop playing the game and just leave us alone so we can pay attention to our meeting.
So, we're not gonna do a citation here.
Like I said, could you leave us
Would you like
alone
to
to participate
citation
in the
or
meeting?
would you like to?
I would like to leave me alone in exercising my rights.
Okay, second time, can we get one arrested into the meeting room?
What's the charge? From a public building to a public meeting.
Better than me, doorway. All right, ma'am, it's time.
Oh, man.
They found me. You
Here it
only
is.
need one person. Holy cow, guys. Wow. It's Bundy all over again.
These will be rules violations. These will be constitutional rules violations. These will be points for Team Patriot. This will count against Team Communist.
She'll take a ticket. You're fine?
I turned my gun over to my wife.
Okay, ma'am, we'll...
Sir, I'd like to ask you to please holster your weapon. Please holster your weapon, sir. Sir, please holster your weapon. Please holster your weapon.
It's... David, they need to hear my partners, okay?
Okay, they need to holster their weapon. There's no reason to have an unholstered weapon.
It's Robert's weapon, sir.
No reason
It's
to have an
Robert's
unholstered
weapon.
weapon. No one's life is in danger. No reason to unholster your weapon.
I came to a meeting, and I would like to stay to the meeting, and I would like to participate.
Do you have somewhere you can
So,
secure this?
no, I'm not gonna.
On the side of my pants.
This
Do you have
is
a
the
belt
law,
loop or
right
something?
here.
Yeah. Is it, yeah.
Put it in there. Oh, yes. No, you don't have a belt on
You need
that.
a... All right. No further past here, Melanie,
Rules
but you're welcome to stand
violation!
here, okay?
Constitutional rules violation!
It's fine.
This is to show you who is signing the citation. So this is the man who is trespassing me.
After they were asked to leave, did you have any interactions with law enforcement?
I did.
And what was that interaction?
We worked with law enforcement to have those individuals who refused to put a face covering on, to have them physically removed from the building if they would not go willingly. Mr. Jones and one other individual were removed from the conference room and taken out through the back, one of the back doors into the back parking lot.
Did you sign any documents to that effect?
Yes, I signed a citation of for citizens arrest for trespass for Mr. Jones and for one other person.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Okay, at this point, we're going through the parking lot. I've been arrested. I'm in cuffs. And the man walks up to officially trespass me. Listen to his reason.
Sir, my name is Randy. I work here with Central District Health. We've asked you to vacate the premises. We've asked you to not be on the premises with a weapon. Both against policies that we have.
You do not have that authority.
We have asked Boise PD to arrest you. And
that's not within your authority either. We'll see you in court, buddy.
Although they said that I was trespassed for a mask on the news, as you can clearly see, the man who officially trespassed me actually never talked to me about masks. Granted, the officer outside, the security officer outside, did brief us on this policy, but I was never trespassed for a mask. I was trespassed for a weapon. This is in Idaho.
Would you like to call a witness?
Actually, Your Honor, at this time, if I may, I would like to bring a motion for a judgment of acquittal under, obviously, Rule 29, but it's analogs and the misdemeanor rules and the infraction rules. That would be Rule 9 for misdemeanor criminal rule, and infraction rule, I believe it's 7E, maybe a C, but I believe it's E. I can double check. It would be E, which creates the standard here of beyond a reasonable doubt. The basis for this is that Mr. Jones was at a public hearing governed by the open meeting laws, and while there may have been a proclamation by the governor attempting to amend the in-person provisions of the open meeting laws, the executive's authority does not extend to amending statute. The governor may direct agencies, but the health districts are not agencies of the state. They are quasi-state agencies apart from the authority of the governor in that respect. That's the way they were created by the legislature. So we have an open meeting here where Mr. Jones is attempting to redress a grievance, which would be an existing order, a September and an October order, which are not on the record or before the court. Mr. Jones attempted to redress a grievance based upon numerous fundamental rights, one of which being that the orders infringe on their fundamental right to petition the government for redress of grievance. We've heard no testimony from the state regarding the planner's authority to trespass, who owns the property, or any of the elements related to knowing or with reason to know that they're not permitted. In fact, at the time, there was an existing order that allowed social distancing, which was totally ignored. Further, the planner testified that there's a policy that applied inside the building and not without. Mr. Jones, there's no, I'm sorry, to Mr. Jones at that time as a visitor, there's no testimony on how that policy differs from any existing orders the department had passed. And there was no process for Mr. Jones to attempt to resolve that dispute. So we have an unknown policy or multiple, and then there's no notice, and everyone thinks they can be there and wear a mask or social distance. In fact, they only let 7 people in. So I guess the gravamen of the argument would be that a finding here of guilty on the infraction would work a harm to Mr. Jones' fundamental right to petition the government for redress of grievance without affording him due process. It also is violative of the open meeting law statute, which is more specific and governs how a state entity must perform open meetings in person. And furthermore, the legislature has since amended the law, and what's the statute? 419.4, sub 4, which makes it an infraction if a person willfully violates an order of the public health district, one that is applicable to all persons in the county. And that's $50 fine with no court costs. Based upon those considerations, statutory and constitutional, Your Honor, we would move for a judgment of acquittal, and I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. So the state's response?
Judge, a couple of things. Here, Mr. McLeland testified that there were 7 observers in the room. They were to comply with the mask policy for that building. And at first, several of them entered the room with masks, and some of them later removed them. He testified that he heard the director tell them that they would have to be, they'd either have to comply or they'd have to exit the building if they did not comply. He heard them be trespassed. They were given the opportunity to leave. When they did not, Officer Paulin came in and effectuated those arrests at that time. The state believes it's met its burden to, on the trespass charge, and we'd ask for you to deny this request for acquittal.
All right, thank you. Mr. Boyle, anything further?
Yes, Your Honor. Comply or exit. That's the theme of this charge. And one wonders how many potential charges we could have in the state of Idaho affecting judicial economy if at any time any state agency could issue a verbal order at a meeting when a prior written order exists. I yield.
All right, thank you. All right, and looking at Idaho Code Section 187008 2A, it says that a person commits a trespass when he enters or remains on the real property of another without permission, knowing or with reason to know that his presence is not permitted. A person has reason to know that his presence is not permitted when except under a landlord-tenant relationship. He fails to depart immediately from the real property of another after being notified by the owner or his agent to do so. In this case, I've heard testimony that Mr. Jones was present at the meeting. I'm concerned with the nature of the proof at this point as to who said what. I've got some hearsay statements about a director making mention that if they're not masked, they must leave. But I'm not sure what our time frame is here. I don't know if Mr. Jones did not leave the room immediately, if he went to some part of the building. The officer testified that when he got Mr. Jones, it seems to be a different part of the building. So regardless of the constitutional arguments, I just don't think the state has met its burden factually to meet the elements of the offense. So based on that, I'm going to grant the Rule 29 motion and dismiss the charge.